I learned very quickly like words that you shouldn't say, and one of them is welcome. So I'm sure you've seen, there's quite a lot of people who say like witches who won't have a doormat that will say welcome on it because you're inviting spirits into your home.
Because one thing that's cropped up again and again, talking to people with similar abilities, is that people interpret this as scary. If something moves by itself, it's scary.
Oh, it can be scary.
Oh, so it can be scary as well.
It can be scary. You make a jump, because you're not expecting things to happen. It'll shock you. But I tend to look at it in a different light now. Whereas it used to scare me years ago, now I think, oh, well, they're doing this for a reason because something's not right.
And so we managed to clear this gentleman out of her house. It was like an energy that was black around this corner of her house. Her dogs didn't go in it, her children didn't go in this space, but he had been the previous occupant of the house and his wife had died and he was still looking for his wife. So often I think when we think about paranormal activity, we think about these ghosts that are trying to like avenge something, or they can be quite aggressive, but actually in my experience a lot of them are just lost.
Hello and welcome to Paranormal Unpacked. Welcome back to Paranormal Unpacked, to part 2 of our 2-part visit to the Rusty Cauldron, where we speak to some of the witches and the psychics in Porthcawl. I'm Mark Rees. Opposite me is Steve Balsamo. Steve, we've had some interesting experiences so far. What do you make of it all?
I'm really interested in talking to people about their experiences. I think anecdotal stuff is really important in the conversation about spiritualism, psychic ability, psi phenomena, and so on. It's great having captured stuff and all of that, and pictures of ghosts and so on. But people's experiences, it just humanizes it all. I think throughout history, the human race has had high strangest encounters, weirdness, and all of that, paranormal activity, if you like. But hearing the stories, I think, is really important. Listening to people and listening to their experiences, I think, is very, very important in this conversation.
And stories is a key word there, isn't it? Because we go there to talk about their abilities and what they do, but then we discover that maybe the shop itself is haunted as well, isn't it? There's so much mixed up in it.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things going on all the time. I think we bring a lot of things to the table, our experiences, our biases, the things that we've had in life traumas, for example, and what's going on in our lives in that particular point. I'm very interested in liminality, that kind of threshold, the time between time. And usually liminality brings with it all sorts of high strangeness. So, and the shop itself is a liminal space. We go there in the day and then we leave there at night, generally. So the shop itself will definitely play a part in the experiences of the people.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that soon, but first we have some more experiences to listen to from the Rusty Cauldron.
Okay, I'm Maria. People know me as my working name, Maria Horne. I'm a working medium. So I link in with spirit. I do use angel cards, but my angel cards, I call it like a tool for spirit because it takes a lot of energy to work for them and for me. So the cards are just like a helping hand. Shows me what I need to be talking about with people. I class myself as a light worker and a healer.
I imagine a lot of people are probably familiar with tarot cards. How would you compare angel cards to tarot cards?
Well, tarot cards, if you ask a specific question, they tend to give you the answers. So where I use my cards, I don't put a deck out. I shuffle and I wait for the card to come. And I call that coming from spirit. So spirit will show me the card I need to be talking about with somebody.
Well,
that
that's
makes sense, yeah.
So you don't see the card, then you're kind of guided to a card?
I'm guided to the card and they tend to just come out the pack what I need.
And over the years through doing that, are there any sort of standout experiences that you've had from...
Well, making people cry and stuff like that. Yes, I normally get what I talk about is right, I hit nails all right on the head, I'm told.
So it sounds like there's a lot of tears then. In this room? Is this where...
In this room, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I know because you're very heavily involved in the spiritualist world as well. Is that correct? What can you tell us about that?
I class myself as a spiritualist. I used to go to churches a lot. I sort of pulled back from that a little bit now because I was doing it more than being at home. I spend a lot of time there. And I'm not always 100% how things are run and how some people have been treated, where there should be, open doors and doors are locked and people have been turned away when they need it. And to me, that isn't what it should be. You should be there helping people. So I sort of pulled away from some of the organisations or the churches because of my own thoughts and feelings of how they're treating people, really, yeah.
And with the spiritualists, again, I'm using layman's terms here. I think a lot of people, they think of spiritualism and they might think of it as the spooky end of things, but really, it's like a Christian church service, isn't it? You turn up and you walk in and you have the service, and there's singing and there's praying.
Yes, and people. I think people go there in their hour of need. It's like I've had in my past difficult times, which we all have difficult times, and I've gone there to have my guidance. So it's like guidance from my loved ones in spirit. Yeah.
And that guidance again, that comes via a medium.
Yeah.
If you yourself have those medium abilities, do you still need other mediums for you? Did you see? Is that what I'm asking?
I do use other mediums. Even though I have my own medium abilities, I don't tend to get what I need for myself. Or I don't believe that if it's right or wrong. So I go to another medium for clarity then.
And I guess that works both ways, doesn't it? If they need clarity, they can ask you.
Yeah. That's what friends are for, isn't it? And because we all work the same way, then we help each other.
Friends in the medium world, yes.
Yes.
Now, outside of this, we are off exploring. We've got the Prince of Wales is next on our list, which I'm sure you're familiar with, very famous place around this part of the world. Yeah. Do you have any of your own experiences in any of these places?
I always feel spirit around, and I have been to places and things have happened, and I know why they're happening. Like a lot of my experiences with spirit is like, for me, it's like a protection. So it's like I've met up with a friend who was with a new partner, and he had a drum, and they were in the pub, and the drum fell off, and I said, he's not a good person, because to me that spirit is showing, and he did turn out not to be a good person for her. It's like a protection thing. I don't find it. I used to, in my younger years, I used to find it really scary when things happened. But coming to terms with things now, I find that when spirit do things like that, I feel it's a protection.
Because one thing that's cropped up again and again, talking to people with similar abilities, is that people interpret this as scary. If something moves by itself, it's scary.
Oh, it can be scary.
Also, it can be scary as well.
It can be scary. You make a jump, because you're not expecting things to happen. It'll shock you. But I tend to look at it in a different light now. Whereas it used to scare me years ago. Now I think, they're doing this for a reason, because something's not right.
So it's all down to how you interpret it then. Yes. And it's all down you.
An acceptance. The spirit are trying to help you,
Yes. And in your work then, have you ever found any, again, sorry if I'm using the wrong words, but any attempts to try and block you, to make things difficult for you? Or is it always, if they want to speak, they will, but there's no sort of messing around?
I don't get blocked really, no, because what I know is I have a gatekeeper, and my gatekeeper who allows spirit through is my grandmother. So if I'm working, she'll only allow through who she thinks is fine for me to work with. So she's like my protector then.
Excellent.
Spirit world, yeah.
We said protector. So people have spoken about people like spirit guides. Does it work in a similar way?
Very similar.
Is that very guides?
Very similar. I have guides, but I know I'm always protected the other side because my grandmother's there.
And with guides, I imagine when people have seen psychics on television, they'll talk to them. They might even hold their head and they'll talk to them. Is that how it works with you, or do you just think questions?
No, I always look that way. When I link in with spirit, right. I look in a certain direction, and then I will. I get visions. I can see things like through a fog. Sometimes they all work differently, Or I see things in my mind's eye. And if I hear them, I don't hear them in my ear. I hear them in my own thoughts. And then sometimes I can just be talking, and it's not my words; it'll come from spirit. So it'll just, it'll just come fluently to me. Yeah.
And how do you Do you kind of do it when people ask you to then? Or
Yeah.
so if you're walking down the street, you wouldn't suddenly get the impulse to...
No.
So it's only when people ask. And does it have to be in a room like this then? Or
If somebody really needs it, Spirit will let me know. Because then I'll start working and I don't even realise I'm working, if that makes sense. You know, I'll be there to help somebody.
Yeah.
Without even realising what I'm doing. But Spirit will let me know. Yeah.
That's really interesting that you can just, as needed. Yeah.
As needed, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned the fog as well. So you're not looking at a person then, you're just kind of looking at a direction. Is that to focus your mind?
It's just the way it happens with me. We all work differently, but the same reason as you know. But yeah, I look that way. Even if somebody's asking me for a reading and I don't want to do it, if I go like that, then I'm linked in now. You know, that's where I link.
Yeah. With the church, is that something you decided to go to yourself at some point, or were you raised in it?
No, I wasn't raised in it, but I've always gone back and forth spiritual churches since my early 20s. Yeah. It's just something that I've always felt that I needed. Yeah. So
just like other people, it's just like being Christian. You just don't. It is what it is, and
it is what it is.
And
yeah.
Actually, and I say, would you say that you are a Christian as well? Because it's the same.
I was brought up with Christian values, yes, and I went to Sunday school as a child, but that's not the sort of church I'd like to go to.
So there's similarities, but they are different as well.
They are different.
If somebody's watching this and thinks, do you know what, I quite fancy giving that a go.
I would tell them to go. Yeah,
just go to your local one.
Go to your local and find out for yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
so there's no sort of warnings or...
I wouldn't tell somebody not to go, because if somebody feels like they want to go, then go, because I would, if I felt I needed something, go. But I wouldn't tell somebody not to go, no.
Angel cards are a fascinating twist on traditional tarot. But next, we meet someone who's had some truly unbelievable experiences.
So my name is Fran Hunt. I am an intuitive healer and I'm also a witch. So I run a healing hub in Cowbridge. So I do one-to-ones with people and work on their healing and empower them and help them remember how amazing they are as people and how capable they are. And I run loads of different events as well. So women's circles, so all based on that spirituality, on healing and things like that. I also get people who have kind of spiritual experiences who ring me and say, Fran, this weird thing happened. And I support them through that as well. So it's kind of a combination of all of those things.
So my next question has to be, what are these weird things? When people get in touch and say these weird things happen to me, can you tell us anything about those?
Yeah, and I think when you first have a spiritual experience, it can feel quite frightening. And my advice to people is always to remember, you are the one with the body. So you're the one in control because you've got a body and they don't have a body. So I had recently a client who she's in America. So this was quite an interesting one because usually I would go into someone's house, but I was having to do it via Zoom, which doesn't sound very magical, does it? Doing a Zoom call. And she had a spirit who wouldn't leave her house. And I was able to tune in and I said, oh, they're behind your TV, aren't they? She said, yes. So we did a lot of work together. So a lot of what I do is about empowering people to have that knowledge themselves. So I want them to know that they have that ability within them and to teach them how to do that. So it boosted her confidence and we managed to clear this gentleman out of her house. It was like an energy that was black around this corner of her house. Her dogs didn't go in it. Her children didn't go in this space. But he had been the previous occupant of the house and his wife had died and he was still looking for his wife. So often I think when we think about paranormal activity, we think about these ghosts that are trying to avenge something, or they can be quite aggressive. But actually, in my experience, a lot of them are just lost, and sometimes all they need is for you to say, it's okay, this is the way to go, and they peacefully go. So I think it's that perception, I think, it needs to change a little bit, that they're not all these bad ghosts out to get you. Often they are just a little bit lost and they don't quite know their way, and actually helping them move on is a gift that you can give them.
Excellent. So it's not the Ghostbuster style then, where you go in and be all aggressive. There's a much nicer way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm quite interested because you mentioned you're doing this, across the Atlantic. Someone's in America.
Yeah.
Do you give them instructions? How does that work? Do you guide them? Do you watch what's going on?
It depends. So with this case that I was talking about, we did a lot of work together on the Zoom call. She was in her house, but I am a psychic medium as well, so I can tune into her house and the energy of the house. So I would say, right, it's behind your TV. Yes. Okay. So we'd work together. And mainly, I think the question that people, when you get a spirit in your house, you think, how do I get it out? But the first question should be, what do they want? And I think that's, because if there's somebody there and they're settled, this spirit, they want something. So instead of asking, get out, and get out of this space, well, it used to be their space, perhaps. So they're not, if somebody walked into your house and said, get out of your own house, you wouldn't go. So it's about working together. What does this person want? And all that this particular spirit wanted was to know that she would look after the house. So she, even though perhaps she couldn't see or sense as much as I could, I just said, tell him, yes, you're going to look after the house. He wanted her to clean up the garden a little bit. So she said, I'll clean up the garden and I will look after this house for you. And he left. And all he wanted to know is that when he left, that somebody else would take over looking after his house. So it is amazing that I can do that across the world. But because we're not talking about kind of the physical reality, you don't have the same kind of restrictions that you do in the physical reality. So I don't know how I've ended up with so many American clients, but I've got quite a few in it, and it works just the same as it does if I've got somebody from Bridgend or Cardiff. It's quite interesting how it doesn't matter where you are, but you can do it that way. I enjoy it.
It's amazing as well that a little bit of gardening can help as well.
Yeah.
If that's really what they want done, it's a little bit of gardening to move on.
He was quite a big gardener, I think, and he was a bit annoyed that she hadn't kept up the gardens that he'd planted. So, and it's just to remember really that spirits used to be human beings in general, not all of them, but most of the ones that we see in houses are, and talk to them like human beings, because that is what they are. It can be scary when they start moving things around and doing weird things, but essentially they're trying to get your attention, and it's taking that fear out of it, I think, and kind of finding that humanity in that spirit, I think is the important thing to get them to move on.
And I like what you said earlier as well. It's always worth remembering you're the one with the body.
Yeah.
They're not. And so is it fair to say that it's almost sort of like using psychology with a human?
Yeah.
But in exactly the same way, you don't change it then. It's just treat them as living people.
Yeah.
And the results will come.
Yeah. And I think I have such an interest in psychology with what I do, and working with people with a lot of trauma. And I suppose I'm kind of doing that for spirits. And I never kind of thought about it that way. The difference is that with spirits, you do have to set very firm boundaries. Early on in my experience of doing this, I learned very quickly words that you shouldn't say, and one of them is welcome. So I'm sure you've seen, there's quite a lot of people who say witches who won't have a doormat that will say welcome on it because you're inviting spirits into your home. And I remember being sat on my sofa and I could sense this spirit. This was before I had very big I have business hours in my house when spirits can come and visit me. So they're not there all day because it's a bit distracting if you've got them popping in and out. They're also not allowed upstairs because when I'm sleeping, as much as I'm experienced at doing it, I don't want somebody in my room in the middle of the night. But before I'd put these strong boundaries in, I sensed this spirit, and I said, they put the taste of roast chicken in my mouth. Now I'm vegetarian, so that's not as delicious for me as it might be for other people. And I wanted to say, you're welcome to just stay around here. But as soon as I said, you're welcome, I could feel them go into my body. I could feel this spirit go inside, and this taste of chicken was in my mouth. And I did say get out, and they got out. But it was a lesson for me of, even though I hadn't finished my sentence of you can stay around my house for a bit, all I had to say was you're welcome. And that they popped inside and I thought, you're not staying in here, get out. So that when I'm doing, unlike with people, well, you still have to have boundaries with people, but you have to think about these extra things that, they're lost, a lot of them, and they will take advantage, and if a lot of people that I work with who've got spirits in their house, they say, I've told them that they're welcome to stay. And I said, but do you actually want them to stay? No, not really. And I said, well, you've given them permission to now. So it's going to get, the moving things, the things you're noticing are going to get worse. So it's about having these strong boundaries. Like I say, people need boundaries, and so do spirits.
I have so many questions now after that story.
That is my weirdest one, I think.
The first thing that popped in my mind was, it's fascinating, this idea about the word welcome.
Yeah.
I actually thought of vampires, about this idea of, once you let them sort of cross over. The second one, am I right in using the word possession in what you're describing when you say the spirit enters you?
Yes.
Would you use the word possession or not?
I mean, I suppose you could, but possession's a word where it sounds like that's quite a dramatic word, and it did. It felt, it kind of, my whole body sort of went, whew. But they did luckily get out of me. Otherwise, I would have had to call another witch to say, "Can you get this out of me, please?" But I suppose, it is possession, and it can be that easy, and it depends where you are in your life as well. Like if you feel a bit vulnerable, I have had clients who maybe have had a car accident or something traumatic happen, and that's again a weakness of your boundaries. And I'm sure you've heard of people who they say, their entire personality changed when they had a car accident and things like that, and that could be a spirit. Obviously we've got trauma there, but it could be that too. So yeah, I suppose you could say it was a possession, only a very short-lived one for about 2 minutes, but even so, you have to be careful. If you don't have that awareness, you could walk around with that spirit, like, inside you, and you wouldn't know. So it is important to, I think, being conscious is really important when you're doing this kind of work.
Well, I've got even more questions now, but I haven't finished my last lot of questions.
That's not even my weirdest story.
So this is, don't forget your weirdest. That's my next. So I've got one question, and then we'll get your weirdest ghost story.
Yeah.
Or weirdest story, sorry, not necessarily ghost story. But when you mentioned setting boundaries, how does that work? Do you say those aloud? Can you think them? How do you set a boundary with something that you can't see?
So I have a set of words like welcome that I won't use. In my house, I have boundaries. So I have working hours, so they know that they can come between these hours to ask for my help. Otherwise, they turn up all the time, and it gets quite tiring on me. In terms of other boundaries, as I say, you always remember that you're the one with the body. So, and they come into your house, they come into you for help. So it's about them respecting that and you respecting them. And I do call in protective guides around me, and I do cast a protective circle. So that with anything I do, with my healing work, with spirit work, witchcraft, I'm always drawing this sacred circle around myself, because that's protecting my energy. It means that whatever happens in that circle is not going to leak out of that circle. So it's that containment of it. And then after you've finished, you can undo the circle, and you cleanse as well. Smoke cleansing is really important to cleanse the energy as well. So it's all these kind of, I call it spiritual hygiene, where you have these steps where this is the boundary, this is what I do. And the more you do it, the more you just get used to it. It's just second nature to me now. Even to the point, if I'm teaching people to do it, I have to really think about, yes, you do this and then you do this. And a lot of what I do has come from mentors. But like the incident where I said, you're welcome, I thought, okay, that was my lesson learned. So part of it is meant from other people that we share knowledge, and part of it is from personal experience. Because when I started having the business hours in the house, I said, right, don't come upstairs because I'm trying to sleep and my little boy is trying to sleep, and it's like a train station in here. So I woke up in the night one night to go and get a drink, and they were all waiting at the bottom of the stairs, all these spirits, about 10 of them. So I was like, right, not at the bottom of the stairs either, because that's also disconcerting when you're in the middle of the night. So you just learn and adapt, and then you kind of get into a pattern of what works for you, really.
With that, I'm sort of going to use layman's terms so people can get a clear idea of this. So when you say there's 10 or so waiting at the bottom of the stairs, do you sense that, or do you look down and see 10 figures standing there? Or
a lot of, in terms of like the way that my psychic and mediumship abilities, I mainly have I know what they're saying, so that comes in, but it is quite visual as well. I am also able to hear them, but I find that quite disconcerting. So that's the other thing to know, is that if you have these gifts and you don't like it, you can switch one of them off. So I started, when I was pregnant, actually, I started hearing them as well. And I thought, I don't like this. I don't want you to communicate with me that way. And they don't, very rarely, I might get one, but they know that if they want to get my attention, I'm not going to listen to them, but I can see them. So yeah, it is, because I'm seeing them through my third eye. It's not as if I can see them like you are sat there. It's almost like you look, well, it's looking through a veil. So you're aware of them, but you know they're not real. So you know you're not going mad.
So I wish we had all day to talk. There's so many more questions that popping up from this. But I really want to hear your weirdest story. You mentioned I haven't heard the weirdest one of all. Can you tell us about that?
So this is a weird story that happened about a year ago. At the time, I was doing a psychic mediumship reading for someone, and one of the questions I like to ask in my readings, if a spirit comes through that my client wants to connect with, I ask the spirit, how can this person connect with you on a day-to-day basis? And usually they say things like, you'll see a white feather, your car radio will turn on, or make a cup of tea and make an extra one for me. And I had this client, it was her grandmother, and she kept saying to me, this grandmother spirit, the word wind. And I thought, this is odd. And I was like, okay, show me. And I was thinking she was going to show me like a leaf blowing in the wind. And I couldn't quite work it out. So I just said to my client, I said, she keeps mentioning the word wind. And this client just burst out laughing. And she said, last night I had a dream that my grandmother walked into my bedroom, farted and walked out. And it was the weirdest message that I've ever received. And that was the one that's really sticks with me, because I think of all the lovely things, you could have made a cup of tea with her and all these things, but it was, no, she came into my room and farted in a dream, and now you've just confirmed it the next day. So that's my weirdest story, I think.
Excellent. And I hope with that one, there was no... that was done in words only. There was no smell to go with that.
Yeah,
there was no
extra
thing to go with that.
Yeah, and I don't know, perhaps that has a meaning to that client. But yeah, that was the weirdest one, I think, and the funniest one. And it goes to show that sometimes with this work, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to get more information, but sometimes with experience, just say the weird thing and it will probably resonate with that person.
I know you did mention as well, there is a story involving crows. If you can tell us that one. So
crows follow me everywhere. And they've always followed me. I grew up in the countryside, so the symbolism of crows is that they can fly between worlds, so that they can fly into the underworld and they can bring messages back. And I was recently, because my business is in Cowbridge, I like to go to the physic garden, and I recently sat down, and they're a good omen for me, crows. And I was having a decision that I needed to make, and I sat down, and about 30 of these crows all just flew really close to me, to the point other people were staring at me. I didn't have any bread or anything. It wasn't because I was feeding them. And yeah, I suppose I got the title as the village witch because all these crows kind of follow me around. But that's another beautiful place. And crows are, every time I go out of my house, there are always 2 crows, and I say good morning to them. So it's that consciousness and awareness of nature around you, I think, with witchcraft as well, is just acknowledging these signs are everywhere. And I think a lot of the time people say, oh, well, I haven't had a sign and I'm just looking for a sign. And then when you delve a bit deeper, you think, you've had loads of signs and all the universe is showing these to you, or spirit is showing you these, and you perhaps don't notice. So it's about tuning in a little bit. But yeah, I am the crow woman, as it were. And they follow me around. So
do you think it's the witch side of you then is the reason for that, or is there some other explanation? I've always been quite witchy, but I've always known that I've had psychic and mediumship gifts. So I grew up in a 500-year-old watermill. So you can imagine there are a lot of spirits around there. When I was younger, when I was about 6 or 7, my mum said I had this imaginary friend called Lloyd. And she said, we actually got quite worried about you because if we had dinner,
I'd make my mum lay a plate for Lloyd. If we went on bike rides, I'd say, "Come on, Lloyd," while she's like, while I'm pedaling my bike. And she said, you really got obsessed with this imaginary friend. And years later, I just didn't think of it. And she mentioned it one day and I thought, he was real. He was a spirit. And I actually went back to the old house where we lived and I sat and I was able to communicate with this Lloyd. And he was a little boy who, because we lived in an old watermill, he'd had an accident and he died. And I realised that he was real. And that was like my first kind of confirmation that actually I've always had this gift and I've always been connected to nature because we lived in the countryside, but I've always had this gift to talk to spirit. And I think I've got a son, he's 5 and he has these gifts, and it's having that awareness sometimes that kids have this big imagination, but how much of that is imagination and how much of that is them tuning into spirit. And that really fascinates me. It's something that I'm researching at the moment, just that, are they imaginary friends or are they spirits? So that was my first experience, I suppose, at about 5 or 6, even though I didn't quite know it at the time. So it's always been with me.
And now it's still an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing quest that you're still looking into and trying to solve.
It's always ongoing. And I think there'll never be a point where you can't know everything. So it's always a point, you're always evolving it. And through your life's experiences, you might need to learn something about that, maybe your health or a situation. And it's always this evolving pool of knowledge. So I love learning. So it's a good path to be on.
Either weirdly, my best friend when I was younger was called Lloyd. And I'm doubting now whether he's real or not. I'm pretty sure he was, but I should go and check.
Interesting,
yeah. But,
I didn't know anybody called Lloyd at the time either. And Mum was like, where's she picked this name from? But it was years later. I think it was in my late 20s that it suddenly dawned on me, hang on, this person could be real. So yeah, it was really special to go back. And every time I go, because there's a mountain behind that I spend a lot of time on. So I say hello to him as I go past. So there's something when children say, I've got an imaginary friend, or you see them, I think, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I've given you another area of research
Excellent.
to look at
What's the mountain behind there?
So where I lived is in between Brincathen and Blackmill. And you can access the mountain from the house, or you can go up to the top. I can't quite remember the name of it, but I just know it as my mountain. It was quite my spiritual place, and there's a lot of magic there. There's a lot of fae folk. There's a lot of spiritual meaning to that mountain for me personally, but it is just quite a magical place to go, and not many people know. More people have discovered it since COVID, but not many people know about it. So it is my special little place that I go. And yes, I think we're so lucky living in London for so long. I lived in London for about 8 years. I really miss that connection to nature, because in London, if there's nature and it's sunny, everybody's there. So I love the solitude here, that you can go out when it's a bit rainy and just have that experience for you. So in some ways I'm very glad that I'm back in Wales, and it's a lot easier to be a witch here than it is in London, certainly.
It's a great line, isn't it? Much easier to be a witch in Wales than London.
It is, definitely.
Yes. Well, Steve, that concludes our visit to the Rusty Cauldron. We heard some fascinating stories. We started off by finding out that maybe the building itself is haunted, which was quite unexpected. We might have made contact ourselves with the other side when the batteries ended up getting drained, and we've just heard some incredible stories there right at the end. What is your overall takeaway from it? And maybe if we start with the shop itself, do you think there's some connection between the fact that there are people out in the back room trying to communicate with the other side all day? Could that in some way influence the fact that the place might be haunted?
I think so, yeah. I think whenever you do any sort of ritualistic thing, it could be prayer, send intention. I think that will definitely affect an outcome in some way. There have been scientific tests for many years on psi phenomena, and, the jury's out, but there's a lot of evidence to say that we can influence certain things, random number generators and so on. So I believe personally that can people doing ritual can definitely affect the outcome. I think also, as you mentioned, the place itself might be a conduit to some kind of strange activity and some high strangeness. So I think a combination of both. But if going back to what we talked about in the beginning, the idea that possibly as people, we need connection with other people and we need community, and within this kind of Wiccan community or pagan community, if you like, there's definite harmony. People come together, they have similar beliefs. There's, a very strong feminist ethos and environmental ethos. So all of these things I think are really good. And just having people hear your stories, and not, if you say something that to some people will be outlandish or may sound slightly crazy about seeing things or experiencing things, having other people around you, just from a kind of a human contact point of view, I've had a similar experience and so on, that can only be a good thing, I think.
Yes, the feminist thing is quite strong, isn't it? Because we only spoke to women there. And that wasn't by choice. We went there and spoke to everyone. And it just so happens that everyone in that coven, and I think it's fair to use the word coven here, they were all women. And also, you mentioned prayer there. And it's worth stressing, this isn't sort of entirely some scary, spooky thing. There is a strong Christian element to a lot of it. You have the angel guards and things. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, in a way, is that reassuring then that even if the place might be haunted, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing. But again, it depends on what sort of angle you're looking at. If you're looking at it from a Christian perspective, you might be talking to demons. And I think it's just, we have to be mindful that somewhere along the line, somebody's going to be upset or believe that you're kind of dabbling with things you shouldn't be dabbling with. Personally, I try and take an overarching kind of view of the whole thing and just try and see what the truth is for myself in the whole conversation. Because I think there's so much noise now in this kind of paranormal world that and the kind of people coming out talking about the UFO UAP situation. I think that's about to kind of gain serious momentum in the kind of wider general public. I think anything's on the table soon. I think interdimensional beings and all of that, I think, are going to be kind of mainstream conversation very, very soon. So I think, keep an eye open. Things are going to get very, very strange. So talking to people in this environment, to me, is very reassuring. I find it very, very, very gentle and reassuring.
And you've beaten me to it in a way, mentioning things like UFOs, because I was going to wrap things up by looking at the future and potential future episodes. Maybe there's a spoiler there by about a minute or so. But going back to the shop itself, and because we did hear this idea in these conversations about setting boundaries, about what one lady in particular, where she says, enough's enough. I'm in my home. Don't bother me anymore. I'm off to bed now. Leave me alone. In a way, do you think having a place like this where these things take place is almost a good thing? Because at the end of the day, you can close the door, lock the door, walk away, and leave whatever it is behind.
Well, absolutely. But if you look at it from a traditional Orthodox Christian way, you'd go into church and you'd pray. Of course, people pray in their own homes, but you'd go there and congregate to have an experience with the divine, with Christ, with God, with the divine. So I think it's a very secular way of doing religion, if you like, because these pagan religions or quasi-religions or whatever, I think, are fulfilling a need within us to connect with something that's bigger than us, if you like. So I think there is a desire for a lot of people for that to happen. But going on to what's coming next, I think we've been contacted since doing the Ron the Street Poltergeist episode. We were contacted by some people who claim that an airport in Swansea is haunted. So we're going to go and take a look at that. There've been full-bodied apparitions and all sorts of very interesting paranormal activity going on down there.
That does sound incredible, doesn't it? We've got quite a shopping list now, and we have places that we need to get to, sort of in Wales and beyond. And I mean, we should give a quick thank you as well to everyone, because the Ron the Street Poltergeist video, our first full-length video, just went a little bit bonkers, really, didn't it? We didn't expect that response. It
did very well, and I think it just shows that people are really interested in this subject. And I think it's a very interesting time to be alive, to be honest. I think there's, things are going to get stranger. But one other thing as well, in the news recently in the UK, there was a care home in England that had to call in the church to do an exorcism because of how many people had seen something in the place, which I found very interesting. And you've been in contact with them, have you, Mark? Have you heard anything back?
I've had a polite, we've received your email, nothing further. But it's really weird because I was, as you do, I was on BBC Bristol, I think, recently, talking about exorcists before this case came up. So there's definitely something in the air at the moment connected with this idea of exorcism, which, again, is a topic I think we need to look into, isn't it? Wherever that might be, I think that's another one for the shopping list. Absolutely.
But it's really interesting, as we're talking to all of these people, more people than I thought are having these experiences. So experiences of high strangeness, of paranormal activity and precognition and synchronicity. I think things seem to be speeding up a bit. And what that is, I don't know. But I think, as I keep saying, things are going to get very weird.
So to wrap that up then, for the future, we're looking at exorcisms, we're looking at UFOs, and we're looking at a big shopping list of places that have been in touch. And of course, we're always looking for more places, aren't we? So if anyone does want to get in touch with any suggestions, any invitations, please do. And in the meantime, keep an eye out for the next the next adventure on Paranormal Unpacked.
And thanks for watching.
Thank you. And of course, we should send a huge, huge thank you, a huge diolch yn fawr to Debbie and everyone at the Rusty Cauldron who helped us out and very kindly gave up all their time to talk to us about these experiences. As you might have noticed in the video, there was a big, huge closing down sign in the window. We did time it perfectly to get there before they relocated. They are now heading out on the road. So if you would like to get in touch with Debbie or anyone else that you've seen in this video, have a look for Triple Moon events and they can point you in the right direction.